All right, so I thought it would be easier to accompany my answer with some programs that I've written. This is Amir. His usual block length is 4 weeks, and I'll show you standard 4-week peak. But for the Powering Through Classic, he had 5 weeks. For the East Midlands Classic, he had 6 weeks. And I've got Renzo here, who only had 3 weeks for Bucks. And I'll show you how that compared to his 4-week peak for Nationals. Starting off with Amir, his progression does look different from each program just because over time we can figure out like how to progress for him most optimally. But in general, right, when it comes to a shorter like time to peak, we want to have smaller jumps between, you want to have bigger jumps between each week. So for example, he only had 4 weeks here, and the trend you'll see is that the jumps we take on average are much greater. So for his deadlift mainly, you can see 5.5, 7, 8.5 into comp. So here we jumped 1.5, 1.5, 1.5 into comp, again 1.5. For the Powering Through Classic, right, he starts off a bit lighter, so you can see 0.5 lighter, but we're progressing it at a slower rate. So you can see 6, 7, 8.5. So a big jump towards the end, and then, another 1.5 into comp. So the weeks here start off a much lighter, but within 3 weeks, we've only gone up 2 RPEs, 5 to 7, versus within 3 weeks here, we've gone up 3 RPEs, 5.5 to 8.5. So the biggest thing here is that when you have more time, you don't want to be accumulating as much fatigue, because of course that can cause you to fizzle out earlier or peak too early. And then going into his EM Classic, he had 6 weeks. So what would you expect? Jumps to be even smaller. So you can see 5.5, 6, 7. So within the first 3 weeks here, we've only gone up 1 RPE. So as the block got longer to run, we just progressed the early weeks lower, but we still retained those bigger jumps towards the end. So you can see for the 6 weeks, he had a 2 RP jump into comp, which worked very well. He peaked amazingly. And for here, 1.5 jump for this block and 1.5 for here. So we focused mainly on remaining his jump into comp similar, but for the other weeks, we started off very easier. Alternatively, what we could have done is have a pivot block. So when you had 6 weeks here, we could have ran these first 2 weeks as a mini block. And then, start this 4 weeks out block here, similar to how we started off this block here. But it isn't really, wait, is this the right one? Sorry, we could have done the 6 week block, similar to how we did the 4 week block, but having the first 2 weeks in this block be chiller, and then starting this as the week 1, where the RPEs would have been, similar to how it looks. I'm sorry, I'm just getting it wrong. To how it looks here. But I thought, no, we can just pace it slower and we can get the same result, which it worked out very well. With Renzo example, he had Nationals and then Bucks straight after. So you can see for the 4-week peak, 1.5 jump, 1.5 jump, and then 2 into comp, right? Nice big jump into comp, and it worked very well for him. For Bucks, because he had back-to-back comps, right, where he pushed very hard here, that means he still got a lot of fatigue on his back, right? I don't want to have him start this block off very heavy, because we do need to dissipate some fatigue. So at 5, literally small jump, 1.5, big jump, 1.5, heavy enough to give us a good gauge of where his strength will be on comp day, because the plan was literally on point. That's actually 282, so I increased it. And yeah, we didn't push hard in prep because he just maxed out in comp block before. Again, tapered, he came in even stronger on this comp here, and that's because we didn't push too hard here. If we had pushed too hard here, most likely he would have come into this comp a bit too tired, right, too fatigued. If he was coming off D-train, for example, he didn't max out in comp here, I would have pushed these weeks a bit harder. So you might have seen an RP6, and this might have been an RP8, 8.5, because he's detrained. But because he was very trained from competing, it just means this block here didn't need to be that hard for him to still come in and peak very nicely. So the biggest things here, right, is more time to peak, take less jumps, less time, bigger jumps, and that's essentially it.